Episode 14 of Alternate Future of the World. Let's get into it. So in last episode, World War IV began in this world, with the entire world going against the Sino-Russian Union. Yeah, let's get into it. Starting in North America, because North America, at least in that theater, is not doing well at all for the Sino-Russians, as they will be, getting destroyed, and Alaska will be pushed back to here. Over in Canada, Quebec will be falling, as they have a lot bigger problems to worry about than North America, like this, yeah. So they are able to greatly push into the Canadian areas of the Sino-Russian Union. Yeah, that's over in that front. The Sino-Russians are able to push back and destroy Thailand in this theater, though, as they will be able to push them all the way down to the Malay Peninsula, or at least the end of it. They would be losing in the European theater, specifically the Western Europeans, as they would be losing control over a lot of the Baltic areas. But in Iran, a lot of Indian and Persian areas are getting pushed back, as Persia is fully pushed back, and it's being pushed back. So, and this is really bad, as the Middle Eastern country, they lose that. That's a pretty big country to lose. Yeah. And then a great pushback in Alaska is going to happen. The goal of this union in North America is to have it as a distraction for the Americans. Yeah. If they have enough troops here, then the Americans will be distracted with this. So then they don't have to send troops to here. Or they can't. So the Sino-Russians will be remaking a landing on the western coast and will be rapidly advancing into it. And this is a major pushback by the Sino-Russians, as they will be serving as a huge distraction for the Americans. In the Middle East, the Sino-Russians are still, pushing back in the Middle East as they get pretty close to the Middle Eastern capital, which is, if I can get the color, this is where the capital of the Middle East is, and they're really close to it. So the Sino-Russians are going to be surrounding the capital, which is really bad. But over in fix some, yeah. Over in other areas, the European funds they're not really too focused on that, as the capital is all the way in Beijing, second capital Moscow, so they may have to worry about that. But the Ottomans will be landing on, Crimea, and will be taking their area. Not the Ottomans, the Turks. And they will be pushing greatly into the European theater, as Europe is just not doing well at all for this union. And then Iceland gets taken, which is really bad for the Sino-Russians, as it's kind of their way of connecting to these Canadian colonies here. But then eventually, the Greenland areas here will all be falling because Iceland is kind of the main reason why these areas are still part of this union and haven't broken away or been released. And when Iceland got lost, they get taken, which makes the Americans have to worry majority on this. When that happens, the Sino-Russians will be greatly pushing back the Americans in this area, and will be trying to get to DC. Yeah. Over in the Middle East, the Middle East and African armies will be mainly focusing, and also South America. South America's kind of split. Europe is focused on Europe, Africa is focused on the Middle East, and South America is kind of split between Indonesia and the Middle East. And Indonesia is focusing on up north. Yeah. When we get to Antarctica, the Antarctic colonies are going to be falling pretty quickly, as there's literally nothing here. Still maybe 10,000 scientists here, and I don't think there's only like two scientists that were once in the military. So yeah, they just take over that entire area. And with African and South American troops arriving, the Middle Eastern capital was at least not surrounded anymore, as they will be able to greatly push into this area and will be able to recapture parts of the Caspian Sea. But the Sino-Russians are still able to have a foothold in the Persia, and they were making a landing in the UAE and taking this peninsula. Yeah. And then, finally, the Sino-Russians realized that the European theater is a massive threat to them, so they would go ahead and do a giant sweeping method to try and retake all the territory. They won't be successful in Poland, but yeah, specifically in the areas that the Austrian painter person would say is normal. Yeah. So they will be able to greatly push back these people and will be able to they'll not do that, but they will be able to do this and make the theater look like this. Yeah. And currently I'd say the Sino-Russians are winning. And then it becomes apparent when the entirety of the Middle Eastern capital is captured and the Middle East is falling back to Egypt. The Middle East is surrendering to the Sino-Russians. The Sino-Russians just are destroying the Middle East, as they would be capturing the entire Arabian Peninsula and capturing the Nile River area. Time to go back to Indonesia, as they will be able to continue making their advances over in the Indonesian area with the strongest navy in the world. Their navy is mainly focusing on the Pacific, so they're able to take these islands, but Indonesia's navy is not doing well, as Java is taken. And it looks like they might win the war. As in the American front, all of this area is going to be greatly pushed back, and the Sino-Russians make it to the Great Lakes and start making their front down to Texas, where they will be able to capture the Texan state. And, they will be doing a sweeping motion throughout the entirety of the Mexican front, and will be able to take over all of the Mexican areas controlled by America, and will start their push into Central America. And then they will go ahead and reach Florida as well. They do that. And the Americans are scared. They are worrying for their life. Yeah. As Indonesia is going to be slowly losing ground over time, as landings are made in the oceanic area and the entire Australian island is taken. And eventually, Indonesia is going to be forced to surrender, as they just can't fight this war. So now the Sino-Russians have to focus on Europe and Africa. They will start a massive operation in the African continent in the Horn of Africa in order to take over the Ethiopian area. What they do, they reach the Nile Dam that is controlled by Ethiopia and shuts it down, which makes all of this area with the Nile completely just forced to surrender, as they're losing their water as they go down the Nile, and will be able to make and eventually reach this lake here. Yeah, and we'll be having their massive frontier. And with this encirclement being made, they'll be able to take over the Horn of Africa area. And, it's not going too well in Europe either, as Berlin is captured. Well, probably not the best city. Maybe possibly the best city to capture. And, it's not going too well, as the blue team is just getting absolutely destroyed. Other than the Canadian areas, the red team's Canadian areas. And, it looks like it's not going so well for them, as they will be making a landing on two occasions, and a couple other occasions throughout South America. And all these landings will eventually connect, and, the navies are going to be absolutely destroying the entire American continents. The South American and North American continents have navy landings made all over them. And eventually, South America, with the giant military coming in and encircling it, and, South America falls. And then eventually, Iceland is recaptured, and so is the Canadian areas, and the Alaskan areas, and the Americans have basically given up. Their morale is completely gone. And as DC is taken, the entire American continents are taken by the Red Team. All that's left is Africa and Europe. But Europe soon to not be there, as the Roman Republic has fallen, and Napoleonic France is going to do as best as it can in order to stop the fronts. But they won't be successful, as Napoleon will be falling, and even Queen Elizabeth, the Queen, won't be able to survive, as the giant navies from all over the world will be swarming the British Isles and destroying it. Same thing with Liberia. The world is really worried. If this union wins the war, it will own the entire world, from Americas to Antarctica to Africa to Europe to Asia to Oceania to, if I can make a new layer, the moon. Yes, with the moon. Yeah, there. And they already control the moon. So the only part of this world that is not part of this union is Africa. Africa will be trying as best as they can, but who knows if it'll be enough, as the North African countries will slowly over time be forced to surrender. And as the Sino-Russians will be able to make and destroy the entirety of the Western African theater here, it's just not enough. The world has given up, and countries don't believe. People have fled to Africa to get away from the war. The war has absolutely destroyed this world. And with this world just kind of comes this union. This union takes over the world. Nothing can stop it, as the union will be coming in and taking all of Africa. Wait, why is the war not over yet? Wait, why do I see blue on the map? Tanzania is still alive. They are holding out against the giant armies. And as they come in, eventually Tanzania will be pushed back to here. And then, as it feels like this union will win this war to take over the world, Alex Einstein finds something great. He finds a machine that can put all... He finds his machine. He finds a version of his machine. His machines all of them were destroyed. Europe, South America, North America, Asia, Oceania, they were all destroyed. But he found one copy still remaining. And this copy was made by another scientist. And he made it so he could summon people from anywhere across the world, duplicate them, and basically combine all his machines. So he could summon all of these world leaders anywhere in the world at any time. And Alex Einstein is going to go into hiding as the world can't handle it. And well, the Tanzanians are gone. But wait, why isn't the war over? The war isn't over. And then, eventually, if we go to Mongolia, Genghis Khan himself rebels away on the side of the blue team. And not just Genghis Khan. Napoleon has rebelled. The Queen has rebelled. The painter, Caesar, all of them are back. When we go to the Americas, Lincoln, Benjamin Franklin, and George Washington will all be back to decide to take all this. Christopher Columbus comes back from Cuba to take his country, or his place. Middle Eastern Alpha leaders will be coming back. Arabian leaders, African leaders, Libyan leaders, leaders from around the world will be coming together to take down this union. As the rebellions will spread over to, no, not that much, that's a lot of territory, but they will be spreading over, not that far again. Let me just get a small brush. They will be spreading throughout the entire Iberian Peninsula, and slowly over time, Europe is coming back. The world has hope again. And as it comes, there's many Genghis Khans, Napoleons, Genghis, and many others are here in this small Mongolian rebellion in order to take down this union. India itself will rebel, even without the leaders coming back. And then, the biggest rebellion, most important out of all, Communist China comes back. Mao Zedong, he rebels away from China. Taiwan comes back. And eventually the Koreas will be figuring it out. And so will Japan. As, well, they're part of the same nation for some reason. Yeah. As the Oceanic Front will be completely surrendering over. And, well, this union is falling apart. As the entirety of the Antarctica is going to be forced into surrender. I never thought Antarctica would become an actual place that surrenders in this series. But eventually, all of the Americas are released. And this Alaskan frontier, it can survive. And as the rebellions will be continuing to grow and slowly connect, as all of these rebellions will just be slowly shaping each other, Moscow, the Russian Empire, the USSR, even worse, they all rebel in one giant Russian rebellion. And that's it for Europe, as Europe will be destroying and separating from the entirety of this world. They will just be separating from this union, as Iceland is taken. And eventually all of these areas in Europe are taken. Europe is being freed, and so is the world. The world finally has hope. When the world was at its lowest and the Union took over the entire world, eventually Africa is gone after many years more of fighting. Then the Philippines will come in, and more Central Asian leaders from thousands of years of history and Siberian leaders will be coming together for this cause, to take down this union. And as they will all be pushing greatly into the areas here, Chinese core areas are left, all that's left. And as these millions of troops around the world will be coming together to take down this union, eventually, the capital is the only place left. And eventually, they go in, take Beijing, assassinate the leaders, and force the Union to surrender. And that is going to do it for World War IV. And that is going to do it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Alternate Future of the World. See you in the next episode, where we look at the peace treaty for World War IV. And bye!